Well, hello there. This is Chuck here with another installment of Chuck's Captivating Chat. I am a whopping 37 minutes late coming on today, and I do apologize. I had a few small fires to put out, not so much emergencies, but just fires that had to be put out, and some tasks to take care of. And sometimes real life, quote unquote real life, coincides with REEL, real life, meaning what's on camera doing this show. And generally, I'm pretty good about getting on here on time. I might be 3 or 4 minutes off because, I work my regular gig here from my apartment before I do the show. Well, today I was multitasking. And I mean multitasking, and not multitasking because I'm so organized, but rather multitasking because I am probably the antithesis of that, and I'm left with no choice. Um, First of the month, rent is due, and I paid my rent. And I went and checked my bank balance today, and I saw that I was about $10 and some odd change short. Hi, Sabrina. Thank you for joining. I saw that I was about $10 and some change short for my rent. And I didn't know if my rent check would hit today or tomorrow, but I figured I'd better make an emergency deposit. And so it was literally looking under the couch cushions, going through drawers. What loose cash do I have lying around the apartment? I managed to scrape together a few bucks, and I had to run down to the bank before they closed to get that deposited to save my rent check. But I also still had work to do because one of my jobs is working for the wonderful Dr. Whimsy Anderson as her assistant. And one of my duties is to make courtesy calls to her clients throughout the day. I've talked about that before, and it's actually one of my favorite things about the job because I get to speak to people all over the country: New York, Florida, Texas, South Dakota. It's a real chance to get a feel, a finger on the pulse of the nation, the emotions, where people are standing right now, and I enjoy talking with these people and getting to know them better. A lot of them comprise the audience for the show that I do on Tuesdays with Dr. Whimsy, Taco Tuesdays on the Oracle of Whimsy. And it's a really nice feeling to see that extended family. Whimsy likes to do this thing where I scroll through the names and go, hi, Jenny, hi, Becky, hi, Robert, so forth. And I feel like that woman on Romper Room, and she used to hold up the magic mirror. Oh, I see little Jennifer. Oh, I see little Mary. I see Bobby. It's almost like that. I've never had quite the following. Hey, Joyce, thanks for joining. I've never had quite the following on this show to do that sort of thing, but that comes with the territory. Well, anyway, to cut to the chase, I had not finished making my calls for Whimsy. I discovered I didn't have enough money for my rent at 4:20 today, Pacific time. Bank closed at 5. I had to do a mad rush to find some cash, get out the door, but I still needed to make phone calls for Whimsy. Well, thankfully, with an iPhone or whatever device you use, the whole world is our office. So here I am. Hi, Kathy. Thanks for joining. So here I am walking down the sidewalk at a very fast clip with my phone, going through my names here, going, hi, this is Dr. Whimsy Anderson's assistant, and this is just a courtesy call, blah, 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 blah. But I managed to do that, leave messages for people. And then, of course, sometimes people would actually pick up the phone, and that's where I would need to talk. But I still managed to do that while I was walking down the sidewalk, frantically trying to get to the bank. I purposely went down side streets so there wouldn't be a lot of traffic noises, and I think I managed to pull it off. I managed to get into the bank, get the money in to save my rent, and then I had to make the mad dash back here, and I get here about 5:15. I'm all sweaty and hot and disheveled. I don't have my lights set up, and so Anyway, here I am. Here I am, explaining why I am egregiously late today. And I thank you all, those of you who have joined me, because it is really appreciated. Your loyalty, no matter what, and even my terrible inconsistency, such as today. But you know what? It's kind of a good feeling getting things accomplished, regardless, no matter how I do it. It gets the energy up. When I used to study acting with Dee Wallace, the wonderful Dee Wallace, who played the mother in E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and she was in Cujo. Splendid, splendid woman. Her whole technique was sort of the antithesis of what a lot of acting classes consist of. Any of you have ever done that, where they have you take a scene and you break it down sentence by sentence, and you put in a beat here, you express an emotion here, you hit this mark here. No, Dee was about throw all that out the window. Her whole thing, and this is a woman who worked with people like Blake Edwards, Steven Spielberg, the best of the best. She's worked with A-list people. She knows how it works. And she said, that's not what you do in real life. Actors have to be able to just jump into a scene and do it. And it has to be natural, and it has to be real and alive. Because if you do all that, as she put it, you do all that stuff, it's death. You're killing the scene. It's like you're dissecting it apart, something that's already dead. And her whole thing was, get your energy up really high. Do no preparation. Get your energy up really high and connect with your scene partner and do an exchange of energy. You send energy to them, they send their energy to you, and you just play off of that, and you channel the emotions and the feelings as they're coming to you in that moment. And it's honest, it's real, it's alive. And because we would always tape our scenes in class, it looked beautiful on camera. Sometimes it would feel like, when in the moment, like you weren't doing anything. Or sometimes when you would watch two actors, it looked like they were doing nothing. But under the, I guess for one better way of saying it, the microscope of the camera, which picks up everything, every little subtlety, every little nuance, it looks beautiful and alive. So I think about that often when I'm doing my writing or I'm doing my artwork. I think about what Dee taught us. Just like jump up and down in place. Get the energy up, get it going, and then get out of your head and just let things channel. And that's what I do many times when I do this show now. When I first started doing these things about a year and a half, 2 years ago almost, thanks to the wonderful Dr. Wimsey Anderson, who coerced me into it in the first place, I used to over prepare, and I would fret, and I would do all this homework and pre-script things and like plan my topics out. And then I started to just realize that's nonsense. That's nonsense. I'd much rather just come on here and have fun and just talk to you guys. And many times, you wonderful people out there, you'll ask me a question or have a topic, and right there's the show. Before I know it, an hour has gone by. You just give me things to start talking about. But yes, Sabrina, that's true about Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy is to this day considered one of the greatest film actors who ever lived. And you watch him. Well, Katharine Hepburn described him as a baked potato. She just said, very simple, very basic, everything you need, and it comes out of the ground. It comes out, it's from the earth. It's perfect as is. That's, and she said, well, I'm like a very fluffy little dessert or something, a little too fancy, but Spencer was a baked potato. But yeah, that's so true. He would be asked for acting advice by up and coming students, and young actors, and Spencer would say, well, just know your lines and don't bump into the furniture. But basically, that was it. He was very much about just being in the moment, being honest and real. And he was a great listener. All great actors, first and foremost, are great listeners. And that was another thing I learned from Dee Wallace. Many times, all you have to do is just listen and just react. And there's your performance right there. That's all you ever need to do. But let's see, anybody else join here? Some people may think I'm not coming on today, and that's why they're not here. But I wanted to put something on. I mentioned this before. I always try to get something on every Monday out of respect to all of you who join me each week. And it keeps my channel alive for the moment. I'm not doing any new videos at the moment. I've explained that enough times, but I have, I think, close to 800 on there. So there are plenty of reruns, stories of old Hollywood, my great love for Lucille Ball. I love Lucy. I once worked on a book on the show. That's why I have all that stuff up in my head. Bart Andrews, my writing partner, he and I used to joke about how we had heads full of worthless information. We were both big trivia fanatics when it came to like old Hollywood, old days of television. I Love Lucy, all these things that have no real meaning, but what can I say? We were passionate about it. What's that, Joyce? Yes, I did see that not too long ago. I have over 2,000 subscribers now. I haven't really been keeping up with this channel that much, and my life's been very busy. I've been working on a lot of other projects, especially art projects right now. And I don't know, I've never really concerned myself about things like demographics and all the charts, who's watching and so forth, and times they're watching, all that. My feeling is I'm just going to just do this, have fun with it, put it out to the universe, and whoever's meant to find it's going to find it. And I'm happy with that for right now. I'm quite satisfied, but it is rewarding to have 2,000 subscribers. I will admit I worked very hard for that for a while. This time, about a year ago, I was really throwing myself headfirst into this channel. Sometimes 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And I might add, I'm not monetized. So I was not making any money. And it was becoming like a career to itself, only with no compensation other than, I guess, the fun of doing this and the satisfaction. People watching me, listening to me. I get lovely messages from people. But I stopped taking it so seriously. I think it's good. I think it's good for a number of things in life. Let's not take ourselves so seriously. Just do our sincerest best, put our best out into the world. And that's what I always try to do. I try to come from a heart-centered place. And it's fun to be here. It's sometimes when I'm stressed out during the day, I look forward to this. I look forward to just getting on here and connecting with all of you people and seeing where the ride is going to take me. Let's see here. Joyce, it's good to hear from you. I hope you're going to start your channel again. Joyce is a gifted astrologer and numerologist, and like myself, you decided to take a little break. Well, you didn't so much take a break from this, but you downscaled from it like I have. But I understand you want to get back into it full time, and I hope you do, because you have so much to give the world. What's that? Sabrina got to live in the moment, not yesterday or tomorrow. That's true. Live in the moment, moment to moment to moment. That's been a hard lesson for me. But a lot. What was there a saying about how a lot of things we're depressed about come from things in the past, and a lot of our anxiety and fear comes from what we think the future is going to have. And so why don't we just stay in this moment, stay in a place of neutrality, and just be open to wherever it's going to go, and we handle it as it happens. Joyce, you see it in the stars. Literally, literally. I'll look forward to doing your show again. Um, I did your show several times. Yeah, you helped me a lot with your charts. In fact, my dear friend Anastasia Pavlov. Oh, by the way, Joyce, I think Anastasia's trying to reach you. She wanted to catch up with you. But there was one show we did where Anastasia and I did a show together. You know Anastasia. She's done this show enough times. We did one just a few weeks ago. But Joyce did a joint relationship chart for us because relationships can be just best friends. It doesn't have to always be romance, but it confirmed so many reasons why she and I are so close, why we have so much chemistry with each other, why she and I seem to go through so many things concurrently. And what was that, Joyce? I think you used the term ascendant, descendant. It goes back and forth for us. But usually what happens to me today will happen to her tomorrow or vice versa. And it's just uncanny. So we often learn a lot from each other, just comparing our notes. Oh, yes, Joyce, business partners. I imagine it could be siblings, business partners, friends, romantic. I'm Joyce. I'm even thinking it could be adversaries, two adversaries. Maybe they'd like to have a chart. Why aren't we getting along? Why are we having problems? Why are we not connecting? I bet you would find a lot of answers for that. Yeah. So, I'll look forward to your show again. This show is very loose and informal. Usually I talk about show business topics. As of late, it's been some other things. It's very light. It's carefree. What I do with Dr. Whimsy on Tuesdays, that is the one where I do my homework because we talk about a lot of news events, and I don't want to be the deer with my eyes in the headlights when I'm asked a question about a current events topic. So I do my very, very best to brush up on the news before I do her show and to be prepared. And I've taken to even writing notes on my iPad, from news events and having that in front of me so I can look down and scroll through it. And it acts as my cheat sheets. It almost came out sounding like something else. Well, this show, no cheat sheets, nothing. I didn't have time. Sometimes I prepare a few topics in advance. I not really prepare, but I write some things down in my notebook like this here. So if I'm stuck, like right now, I can glance down and go, oh, let me tell you about the time Lucy did this, or let me tell you about the time Greta Garbo served me potato salad. What's that, Joyce? Seventh house concerns. It's the house of marriage, partnerships, and it's also the house of open enemies. Whoa. I believe that. I can see where that's very closely intertwined. Sometimes I think there's a very fine line between lover and enemy, friend, adversary. And many times it can be both at the same time. We're complex beings. Astrology reflects a lot of that complexity. I always love talking with Joyce. She's always been very generous with me with her time, and I've learned so much about myself through her. I have one friend, just a good friend of mine, but I've always been curious about, the dynamics of our friendship. And I was going to see if I could get Joyce to do a chart on the two of us. And I asked my friend, well, where were you born? What was your time of play? I don't believe in that shit. I don't believe in that stuff. That's nonsense. I don't believe in astrology. I thought, well, I guess I'm not going to get my information there now, am I? What's this, Joyce? 12 of the houses where you find those hidden enemies. Hidden enemies. Oh, I hope you talk to Anastasia, because not to get into her personal business, but I think she's going to want to know more about that. So let's see. Anyway, where was I? I was then thinking of topics, and I just blurted one out the time Greta Garbo served me potato salad. At least I think Greta Garbo served me potato salad. I'm like 98% certain it was Greta Garbo who did this. And I probably have told the story before, but it's been a long, long time. I think I even have a video on this because I was holding up one of my paintings that I did of Greta Garbo. In fact, because of that video, I sold that painting to a man in Toronto. He watched me and loved it and made me an offer on it. And I said, sure. So I had it all crated up and ready to mail out to him. That and a painting I did of young Joan Crawford in her most glamorous. Yeah. But I love Garbo. Love Garbo. I'm such a fan of hers. I was having a conversation with someone not too long ago who had never seen one of her movies. And I was imploring my friend to at least watch Camille and Nanochka. Camille, definitely Garbo's greatest dramatic role. She was just mesmerizing, hypnotizing. And I mean that truly, because I saw that movie for the first time in a revival theater on a big screen. She just pulled you in and you couldn't take your eyes off of her. And she grabbed you by the soul. But Camille is one I always recommend. And the other one is Nanochka, because Nanochka, Greta Garbo, the very serious Ivan Tobellon Garbo, did comedy and did it really, really well. Nanochka is considered one of the greatest screen comedies ever made. Screenplay by the wonderful Billy Wilder, directed by Ernest Lubitsch. And Garbo, she just let herself loose and had fun. She made fun of herself. In the beginning of the movie, she parodies her own image, and then she falls in love with Melvyn Douglas in Paris. Her heart melts, and just all of her goofiness and silliness and funniness comes out, and she's just as mesmerizing as she was in Camille, but for different reasons. So anyway, I've always been a big fan. Oh my God. And also Queen Christina. There's this wonderful scene after Queen Christina has renounced her throne. She takes her crown off and drops her scepter and takes off the robes. And I don't want to be queen anymore. And anyway, she's on a ship going somewhere. I don't know if it's to America or what, but it's just a wonderful scene where she's silent. And she's standing at the steering wheel of the ship, presumably not driving the ship, just standing at the steering wheel, looking out into the ocean. And it's my understanding the director said, Miss Garbo, I want you to empty your head. I want you to think about nothing. Just stand there. And the camera just slowly moves in closer and closer and closer. And even when she had her head emptied, supposedly, her soul is in her eyes. It's so deep and it's so haunting, that final moment of Queen Christina. Well, anyway, enough about that. I used to go to this health food store. This was back in the 80s. The 80s here in Los Angeles. There used to be a health food store on Melrose and La Cienega called Quinn's. And I found out in latter years that Garbo, during the 80s, she lived in Newark, but she came out to Los Angeles a lot to visit with her friends. And one of her good friends was Mrs. Quinn, who owned the health food store. And I think Mrs. Quinn was also Swedish. And Garbo used to love to come to Quinn's, put on an apron and go in the back, where they had the deli and the bakery and everything, and bake bread with Mrs. Quinn. And I guess even though Garbo had retired from motion pictures in 1941, that was an old past life for her, that playfulness was still in her. because Garbo, and I've had this verified, would work the deli counter. Nobody knew who she was. Just this old woman with long shoulder-length gray hair and a Swedish accent, ringing up sales and getting stuff out of the deli case. And I remember that woman, and I remember getting potato salad from her. And it was only years later I realized, oh my God, that was Greta Garbo. That was my favorite actress in the world, Greta Garbo, serving me potato salad. So it makes a great story. It makes a cute title. You know, I made a video about it, and that was my title. Greta Garbo served me potato salad. What was that? Sabrina saying Lucille Ball and Joan Crawford, both complex, fascinating. Oh, of course, all those actresses. That's what made them so luminous on camera. In fact, one thing I was going to say also about Greta Garbo, Betty Davis, Katharine Hepburn, and Meryl Streep all named her their favorite actress. And Betty Davis was interviewed once and said, I don't even understand myself how Garbo does what she does, other than witchcraft. Those were Betty's words, witchcraft. Betty Davis was like saying, I envy her. I wish I could do. This is Betty Davis saying, I wish I could figure out what Garbo does on screen. Hepburn said basically the same thing. So anyway, just fun to throw that in. Oh yeah, I guess while I'm telling this, when Garbo was at Quinn's, she got chummy with some of the workers there, and she admitted that Ninotchka was her favorite film that she ever did. And there was also a time a woman was giving Coca-Cola in a baby bottle to her infant child, giving Coca-Cola to her baby. And Garbo, who was a big health fanatic, was horrified. And she summoned one of the workers and said, here, I think she grabbed a juicer in a box and said, here, send this to this woman, give this woman this juicer, put it on my tab. And the worker said, well, do we tell her who it's from? And Garbo said, tell them it's from Agnes Schmidt. But yeah, Garbo paid for a juicer and sent it to the woman and said, hopefully that woman used that juicer and did that instead of Coca-Cola. Let's see here. But yeah, Lucille Ball, Joan Crawford. That really is the secret to great camera acting, is to know to do nothing, but yet do everything. And really great camera acting, great actors like Lucy, Joan Crawford, Garbo, they knew that you just let the camera read whatever was in your soul. And I've said that before on the show here, that one of the things I learned from Dee Wallace was you never, ever lie to the camera. You just don't, because the camera picks up everything. It picks up all the subtleties in your eyes. It picks up your nuances, your mannerisms. It picks up your aura. You can see all of that. So I've just learned, be basic, be honest as I possibly can be, because you just can't BS viewers, whether it's or audiences, whether it be film acting or just be doing something like this. Always be true to yourself. Oh, Sabrina, you said you read a Betty Davis biography. Yeah, I think one of the first show business biographies I ever read was one about Betty Davis. I was about 13. And I think where I really got interested in Betty Davis, so the American Film Institute honored her one year. And they were showing all these marvelous clips of her work. And I just wanted to find out more about her, and fell in love with her like most of the world. I mean, the American Film Institute, a few years ago, they did it was considered controversial, but they selected the the 50 greatest actors and actresses of all time, 50 actors, 25 actors, 25 actresses. And Katharine Hepburn came in at number one, but Bette Davis was number two. And because that was a few years ago, I tend to think if that same, however they went about choosing those people, I think if it were done now, I think Bette Davis might come in number one. I base that on just the fact that I keep up with social media, comments, what people write to me about, and I find Bette Davis to be far more popular than Hepburn. Not to impugn Katharine Hepburn by any means. I love her also. I even saw her on stage once. But I tend to feel Bette Davis is edging her out as the most loved actress now. What was that? I would love to meet Samuel Clemens as Mark Twain. Yeah, I passed by my neighborhood bookstore a couple of days ago. There's a new biography of Mark Twain. They had it in the window. I don't know much more about it, but maybe some new things have come to the surface about him. Things are constantly being rediscovered. New archives are opened up and found. New, diaries are found, journals, photo records. But one thing I love about Mark Twain, he was a cat lover. I'm a cat lover too. And Mark Twain, well, I'm paraphrasing him terribly, but he said something to the effect that anybody who loves cats is okay with me. Like you already had a friendship there if you loved cats. But I read that Mark Twain, he traveled a lot, and he would rent cats. When he would be staying in hotel rooms, he would rent cats. He always wanted them around him. I guess his own cats didn't travel too well in those days, so he'd rent them. What was that? Robin Williams had the same personality profile as Mark Twain. If you read up on him, if you can see the similarities, I was never aware of that. I would be curious to look more into that. Robin Williams, you want to talk about somebody complex. I have a friend who used to do improv back in the early 80s with Robin Williams. I can't remember if it was at the Groundlings or like the Comedy Store or something. It was one of the local comedy troupes, and she used to do improv with him before he was famous. But everybody knew he was going to make it. He was just so manic and brilliant and inventive, and he would just leave the other comics in the dust. His mind worked so fast, and his energy was just so off the charts. But my friend who knew him said it was hard for him to sustain that. And that may have led to why he had cocaine problems and other addictions. Maybe he needed to try to numb that or try to control it. And we certainly know he had a very deep side. You watch his dramatic performances. You watch him in Good Will Hunting, for which he won an Oscar, a richly deserved Oscar. That scene where he's on the park bench and he's talking to Matt Damon about his late wife. I think that's some of the most beautiful camera acting I've ever seen in my life from any actor. It's so simple, and it's so solid, and it's so heartfelt, connected. And you watch that scene, it's also, like we were saying about Spencer Tracy earlier, just very basic. It's very simple, but yet everything is there, and there was so much complexity going on. He was a beautiful man. I've heard very, very good, gracious things about him. He had it in his contract when he was making movies that a certain percentage of the crew members hired had to be homeless people. He wanted to make sure that homeless people got jobs. And presumably if you've been on film sets, craft service tables, food, I'm sure Robin Williams made sure they had food. They got meals. It probably made sure they had food to take home with them. He made sure they had work so they could earn a paycheck and also give them a sense of purpose. What a beautiful thing to do. And I've also seen sometimes videos have come to the surface, little homemade videos he made on his phone for fans. Like he would get requests, like a child who was sick in the hospital or something, and he'd just make the sweetest messages for them. I think there was one I saw he recorded about 2 days before he died, and I remember that month because he and Joan Rivers died within 3 weeks of each other, and I thought, oh God, why both of them? When we need people to make us laugh. I was talking about this with a friend just the other day. And I've said this many times, but I think that souls that come into this world, that incarnate into this world, because I believe we all come here with a mission. People who come here to make us laugh. I think that's sacred. I think that's holy. I think like what Lucille Ball did, or Joan Rivers, or Robin Williams, the healing laughter they brought to us, the comfort. Laughter is light. Light casts out darkness. It's such an important thing, and that's why I thought, why Joan Rivers and Robin both leaving us at the same time like that, but then hopefully more souls will come here with more laughter for us. But like I said this before, I might have said it last week about Lucille Ball, because I do believe we come here with a destiny. Lucille Ball was born in 1911. She was clearly, her destiny was television, to do I Love Lucy, the Lucy Show, make people laugh, make literally billions of people across the globe laugh. Television did not exist in 1911. It hadn't been invented yet, but yet it had to catch up with her. She had to catch up with it. And in 1951, they came together. I should check some comments here. Let's see. You went to Hannibal, Missouri. Yeah, Mark Twain's town. It was one giant bookstore, every building and books instead of furniture. Wow, I love that. Well, I love books. I've been guilty as many others, downloading things on my iPad or on my phone and reading that way, but I still love to hold a book in my hands. I still love the smell of a book. I love the texture of the paper, binding. I love the energy that a book holds. I have stacks of books here in my home simply because I just love to be around the energy. Years ago, when I had to move and I had to downsize out of necessity because apartments are so damn expensive here in Los Angeles, and I lost a rent-controlled apartment, I knew if I was going to stay in the city, I was going to have to go smaller. So I had to get rid of almost 1,000 books, because in my other apartment, I had bookcases just filled with books. I love them. I just love having them around me, but I had to sacrifice a lot of books and really pare them down. Gave a lot to friends. A lot of them I just donated to different places I thought they would be of use to. And I had to realize that fantasy of mine of one day having a library in my home was nothing more than that, a fantasy. So, but I have too many books now and I need to divest once again. But I love them. They make me happy. Oh yeah. You were talking about What Dreams May Come. Yeah, that was a beautiful film. I need to watch that again. I would imagine some of the tech, because that was like the beginnings of CGI and a lot of these incredible special effects. And I'd love to see how well it holds up, because I think that movie was what, early to mid 2000s. It's something like 20 years ago. A lot of advancements, but so I'm really curious to see how it holds up. But I remember it being a really beautiful movie. Um, yeah, I love that. What was it? It's very Mark Twain's commentary, very similar to stand-up comedians of today. Well, you've got me interested. I may do some little research on Mark Twain. I love to do this. I was just recently doing some reading about Tolstoy and Hans Christian Andersen and Louisa May Alcott and who else did I look up? I don't know. I just Mary Shelley. I love to delve into this. That's the beauty of things like Wikipedia. Or you can go much deeper than that, but at least that gives you an overview. Um, Hans Christian Andersen, quite fascinating. Um, Found out that he and Charles Dickens had sort of a tempestuous friendship slash relationship, and there are differing versions on that. Officially, they were friends. And there is a story I read not too long ago about it was kind of like The Man Who Came to Dinner, that saying about house guests are like fish. After 3 days, they start smelling and going bad. Well, Hans Christian Andersen and Charles Dickens had a correspondence going back and forth, and Hans was invited to stay a couple of weeks with Charles Dickens and his family, and he ended up staying 5 weeks. And the family got very upset about it, and it's like, how do we get rid of him? And it soured the friendship, and supposedly Dickens did not want too much to do with Hans Christian Andersen anymore. But I've also read other accounts, and again, this is all apocryphal. I'm not making claims. Anybody out there really knows their literature, their literature, I should say, but there are some accounts that it was more than just a friendship. It might have been a love affair. In fact, Hans Christian Andersen, it's pretty much accepted about his homosexuality. I was reading that The Little Mermaid was actually based on, it was a man that Hans Christian Andersen had unrequited love for, and his heart was deeply broken. So he poured all of that into the story of The Little Mermaid. And of course, the actual version that he wrote is quite different from the sanitized Disney version, where the Little Mermaid dies and she disappears into sea foam, into the ocean. And that was supposed to be representative of Hans Christian Andersen's broken heart. So I'd love to find out more about Dickens, you say, and Hans, if there's any truth to that. I don't know. Yeah, Louisa May Alcott was very progressive for her time. One of the others, Harriet Beecher Stowe. I found out she was quite progressive for her time also. Um, I've been doing a lot of research on 19th century figures. It's for a project I'm working on right now. I don't want to discuss too much about it. Not that I don't trust you wonderful people there, but because I do live in LA, and I've written things, screenplays, books, and I've had a lot of my things stolen. And unfortunately, it goes on a lot. It goes on a lot in this town. A lot of big names end up taking credit for what unknowns like myself have created. This, I don't mean just screenplays. A lot of songs get stolen. A lot of these music stars who seem so prolific, and they keep having number one hit after hit after hit, and claim that they're writing all these songs themselves. That's not always the case. I could do another show on that, and and I don't really want to go into it here, but that's why I've learned to be very discreet when I talk about my projects. I'm just going to say it is involving a lot of 19th century figures. It's people of the arts of the 19th century, shall we say, the superstars of the 19th century. Uh, Van Gogh, Cezanne, composers, you know, opera stars, ballet dancers, writers. I've just been researching into all of that and putting some things together. It's for a project. When it's completed, I'll talk about it more, but I've got a few more months to go with that. But I'm having fun with it. I love learning, and I love reading, and I also love taking figures like this and breathing life into them, bringing them back to life. You know. So anyway, what's any other comments here? What was that? I've heard that in Believe It. Heard that and Believe It. I'm not sure what you were referring to, Sabrina. I'm so sorry. Maybe you can enlighten me there. But I'm always fascinated by great talent, and how each artist goes about. Oh yes, Sabrina, the stealing. Yes, it goes on. It goes on a lot. I could tell, if I could speak more frankly, which I don't want to do in a public forum like this. I have horror stories, real horror stories. People who have had a lot of things stolen, and it's unconscionable. But that's just the nature of this business here. And I've lived here 40 years now, and not much shocks me anymore. I was one of the people that came out to Hollywood many years ago with stars in my eyes and all innocent and naive. Well, you lose that pretty quickly after you've lived here for a while. But there's also a lot of good too. I still live here. I still love it here. I'm still pursuing dreams. I'm still optimistic. And even doing things like this, I just keep trying things. I have a very good friend. She keeps kicking doors in. 98% of the time, there may be nothing on the other side of the door, but when there is something behind that door, it's fabulous. And you don't find these things unless you just keep putting yourself out there. You keep trying new things. That's one of the reasons I keep doing this weekly show. It's why I made all those videos, why I'll eventually make some more. It's just whatever it takes to reach the right people. And I believe that. In fact, I find that exciting. That makes life all the more an adventure. Not knowing what's going to happen, just looking for the surprises and the gifts as they come our way. Let's see here. Is there anything else I can talk about on here? Usually I'm a little more prepared than this, but because of this, today it was just running in the door, setting up the lights, setting up the computer, coming here, going on the air and going, it's showtime. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can talk about. I'm just looking at the comments here. I don't have too many on here, but it mentioned, Sabrina, you mentioned Lucille Ball and Joan Crawford. This might be a story to close on. Do you know about the time Joan Crawford guest starred on the Lucy Show in 1967? And I think it's a pretty good show. You know, you can find it on YouTube. But it was not an easy week. Lucy, she had a bad experience with Tallulah Bankhead a decade earlier. And I've told that story before. I was on the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour about how Tallulah was drunk during rehearsal, seemingly did not know her lines, know her blocking, and she was scaring the hell out of Lucy and the others, like, because they had like 4 or 5 days to rehearse, put everything together, and get up and do the show in front of a studio audience, in front of the cameras. And Lucy was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with this woman? And it turned out Tallulah was, she got in front of the audience, the camera, she was letter perfect. And it threw the other actors off. Lucy said, I was the one forgetting my lines because I was so scared what was going to happen. And Lucy speculated that that was a trick that Tallulah was doing. It was an old actor's trick to upstage the other actors, keep them off guard, throw them off, so you can come out and be the one who shines and is perfect. And Lucy said, I will be damned if I ever let anybody mop the floor with me ever again. So it was years later, she was working with Joan Crawford. And as the accounts go, Joan was drinking. She wasn't remembering her lines, slurring her words, missing her marks. And Lucy was having nothing to do with that. At one point, she wanted to fire Joan, and she yelled out, can we get Gloria Swanson? Is she available? Can we get her to fill in? And I think she said that right in front of Joan Crawford. I mean, Lucy retaliated. I mean, maybe she thought Joan was doing what Tallulah was doing, but Lucy was really tough on her and almost relentlessly tough on Joan, to where Joan ran to her dressing room and she was huddled under a table, crying. She was crying, and somebody came in, Miss Crawford, are you all right? And Joan said, everybody says I'm the bitch. But true to form, night of filming, in front of the cameras, in front of the audience, Joan came out and she was letter perfect. So who knows? Who knows what the truth was? But she and Lucy clashed during that week. And by the way, the thing about Lucy, people call her a bitch and a monster. No, Lucy just cared very deeply about her shows. And when she was in rehearsal mode, she was like, like blinders on, a horse with blinders, just very straightforward, very, very focused on the show. And she was always very focused, not just her performance, but everything. Lucy knew the lights overhead. She knew what each technician's job was, the sound person, the camera people. So she would sometimes semi-direct her own shows because she knew everything inside and out, backwards and forwards, oftentimes better than who was directing that week. So she cared deeply about every facet of the show, and she really wanted every single actor, right down to someone doing a bit part, like one sentence. She would make them do it over and over until it was perfect, because she wanted every element of that show to shine. She wanted every actor to shine. She was very smart in that respect. She knew for her to look good, everyone else needed to look good. And it was also a case of Lucy being just very generous. Even though people thought she was a maniacal bitch, she was actually being very generous. She was caring about these people. So when you'd have, and I've been told by people who worked with Lucy, that if you knew your stuff, you did your job, you were just fine with her. You got along. But you didn't know your lines, you didn't know your marks, anything like that. She had no patience for you. And watch out. And those were usually the people who called Lucy a bitch, because I've talked to people who worked with her who loved her, said she was an angel, very caring. Let's see, what are some other comments on here? What was this here? Oh yeah, Tallulah Bankhead was a strange woman. In fact, on my channel, I have a few videos about her. In fact, I got criticized because one of them I had to use some rather vulgar language, but I was just quoting the woman. The woman was vulgar. She was outrageous, but she was a lot of fun. Oh, like the story of the time she was taken to midnight mass at St. Paul's Cathedral. And big surprise here, she had been drinking. And she probably hadn't been in a church in decades, and she's standing there, and the priest is coming down the aisle, with the burner with the incense smoking, and Tallulah turns to the priest and goes, "Oh, darling, your dress is divine, but your purse is on fire." There was another story. She was in a restroom stall in the ladies' room, and there was no toilet paper. And Tallulah called out to the woman in the next stall, "Oh, darling, do you have any toilet tissue in there?" And the woman said, "Oh dear, I don't think there is any here." And Tallulah said, "Well then, darling, do you have 2 5s for a 10?" Anyway, there are all kinds of stories like that. What's this here? What, Joyce, you're asking Joan or Tallulah? Well, both were very strange and both were very eccentric. But I would have to say that Joan was probably the more professional and disciplined of the two. In fact, Joan was rigidly disciplined. She was a control freak. She loved to control people, but she controlled herself even more. I think Tallulah was just a loose cannon. You never knew what was going to come out of her mouth, what that woman was going to do. And Joan, I think, was more ladylike, at least publicly. She was much more ladylike. I think Tallulah just didn't give a damn. She just was who she was. What was that? Tallulah, the cigarette burned nightgown that she wore that got, I don't know, that's all that there is to the sentence. It ends at "that got." That's all it says. You'll have to tell me what you mean by that. Her Tallulah's cigarette burned nightgown, but I'm sure her nightgowns had lots of cigarette burns. I bet Betty Davis's did too. Oh my goodness. I'm just imagining what Betty Davis or Tallulah Bankhead's ashtray must have looked like. They were both chain smokers. It was, I'm rewatching The Crown right now. I was watching it each season as it came out, and I thought it'd be just fun to sit down and watch it from season 1 straight through the whole 6 seasons, watch it in one setting. I'm watching like 2 or 3 episodes a day. I'm up to season 3 now. But I was reading an interview with Helena Bonham Carter, who played Princess Margaret during the 3rd and 4th seasons. And she went to a psychic medium, and they brought up Princess Margaret, and Princess Margaret gave her a piece of advice. She said, if you watch The Crown, you see Princess Margaret has a cigarette holder, and Princess Margaret said, "Hold your cigarette holder like it's a weapon. It's a weapon. It's a way to express yourself, express your true feelings, your body language through your cigarette holder." So I've been watching that to see Helena Bonham Carter, how she worked with that. And also, it was kind of funny. She asked the medium, "Well, how do you feel about me playing you, ma'am?" And Princess Margaret, according to this interview, said to her, "Well, I prefer you over to that other actress they were going to cast." And Helena was going, "I didn't know there was another actress they were going to cast." And Princess Margaret was going, "Oh, they were. I like you much better. But if you're going to portray me, you need to get your act together. You need to scrub up, how the British talk. You need to scrub up if you're going to play me." So that was very amusing. But anyway, Sabrina, what did you mean by Tallulah's cigarette burn nightgown that she wore that got it? The sentence cuts off. I don't know what else you meant there. I don't know if you. Anyway, maybe your comment will come up if you're still there. But anyway, this has been sort of a loose, free-form show, and it may be one of those shows where I watch replay and go, oh, this was a mess today. But it's just honest. It's real. When I first started doing these live shows, I was told on YouTube, people actually like the flaws. They like you to be real. They like it when you make mistakes. They like it when you're not so polished and professional. Well, guess I'm giving that to you today, aren't I? So if anybody else has any other comments or questions for me, I think I'm going to sign off because I've been on here an even hour now, according to the clock in the upper part of my computer here. And I'm just going to remind you, please, to join me tomorrow on the Oracle of Whimsy channel. And that's the channel that the marvelous Dr. Whimsy Anderson does, where she does her intuitive readings. She's a tarot card reader, an intuitive reader. She specializes in heart-centered remote viewing. And she's also a gifted naturopathic doctor. And I, of course, in real life work as her assistant, but on Tuesdays, I get to co-star with her. Well, actually, I always feel it's Whimsy's show. I always feel like she's the Johnny Carson. I'm the Ed McMahon. I hate being audacious, say I'm the co-star, but I love doing it with her very much. And Whimsy's the whole reason I'm even doing this right now. She's been a mentor to me on so many levels. And I still remember her trying to get me to do the show in the first place, and I was kicking and screaming, going, Lois, Whimsy, I can't do a live show. I can't do this. And she's like, yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can do it. And got on there and found that I love it. And we have a lot of fun together. You know, we used to work together here in West Hollywood in the health industry. And I've said many times we used to get in trouble at work for talking too much. Two adults, two professionals, and we'd be chided for talking too much at work. But we get to go on and do our own show now, and we talk all we want. We get silly and goofy, and we also get serious. And let's see. Oh, yeah, Andy didn't show up today. But you know, I would imagine several people are not here today because I got on so late, 37 minutes late. I gave my excuses at the beginning, but really there are no excuses. Thank you for bearing with me. It was a multitasking day. If you didn't see me at the beginning of the show, I was saying how I had to get some emergency money in the bank so my rent check wouldn't bounce. And I still had not finished my phone calls for Dr. Whimsy. So I was literally here with a notepad and my phone, walking down the sidewalk going, hello, this is Dr. Whimsy Anderson's assistant, check, blah, blah, blah. Doing that, but I managed to pull it off. And as I said at the beginning of the show, I can multitask very well. And it's not because I'm super organized. It's because I'm super unorganized. And push comes to force, and I have no choice but to be multitasking and getting things done at the last minute. Oh, yes, Joyce, it's true. Whimsy and I will probably talk about that tomorrow. Taco does have a whole new meaning now. And we know what that is. A lot I don't talk about on here because I've just learned it's best to try to be neutral on politics. Last fall, I was open about who I was supporting in the presidential campaign, and I even did artwork of her, and I did volunteer work for the Democratic Party, and that was all it took to get some really nasty comments on here, some real bullies. And that's where I had administrators like Joyce and Pam step in and block some of those people for me. And we had to do it live on the air. But, you know, I know when you do something like this, you have to be thick-skinned. That's just a given. There are always going to be the trolls out there. Always going to be the people making the snide comments. But I'm a very sensitive person by nature, and I can't help that. I can't help that. It does hurt. It does hurt when you get the snide comments. And I think I'm much better about it now, and I've learned to just block those people, and I've certainly have learned to not respond to them. When I first started doing these shows, I would respond. And I realized what I was doing was taking the bait and going down a rabbit hole that you can never win. It's best just not to feed the monster. Just let them go. Let them go. But 99% of the comments I get on here are very sweet and supportive, and they lift my spirits and mean a lot to me. I appreciate every one of you. Let's see. What was it Joyce said? Having me in 2008, amazing how much change I scrounged up. What was this? I love that painting you did of her. It was so lifelike. Which painting are you talking about? Are you talking about the painting I did of Garbo or Joan Crawford that I mentioned earlier? I have a lot of paintings here. I'm mostly working more on paper now, because paper, it's something I can take and I can put in nice portfolios or thin little storage boxes. Paintings, on the other hand, because the canvases are thick and they're big, when you have a little apartment like this, they can take over your life. I've got a lot of boxes of paintings in here. I probably should just rent another storage unit or something. Try to get my life back to normal. Until I can get a gallery show, or I can start selling some of these paintings, which I'd really like to do. We shall see. But I love to paint. I love to draw, and I love to write. I am an inveterate artist in every respect. It's just who I am. It's my identity. I can't help that. And the ideas are always flowing to me. When I used to work in the health industry, I couldn't help it. Ideas would constantly come to me for things I'd want to write or things I'd want to paint, draw, or elaborate on. So I was always writing things on slips of paper and stuffing them in my pockets, and then coming home at night and then transcribing all of this. And I read that that's how J.K. Rowling wrote much of the first Harry Potter book. She was working as a waitress in a restaurant, and she wrote a lot of that book on napkins and stuffed them in her apron pocket, and then took them home and wrote it all together. I relate. Let's see here. Goddess Foul. Oh, message retracted. Oh, come on. Goddess Foul. Oh, thought you missed tonight. Well, Goddess Foul, hi, thank you for joining. Well, actually, I'm just about to sign out, but the reason I'm on this late is because as I explained earlier in the show, I started very late today, and I've already told the story twice. I won't tell it again, but I didn't get on until 5:37 today. But I really appreciate you being here. I thank you all for being here. But I'm going to wind this down for now, and unless somebody has a comment or a question, I'm going to wrap it up and get back to work here on some of my art. And I will be here, like I said, tomorrow, Taco Tuesdays, Oracle of Whimsy channel. I'm on there, Dr. Whimsy Anderson, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And as far as this show goes, I want to say 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And my reason I say I want to say is because I very much want to be on time next week for a delightful change of pace. So please look for me then. And if any of you have any ideas for topics or anything, I'm always open to that. Send it to me. Anything you'd like me to talk about next week. I have this head full of information and a great love of old Hollywood, and I like to unleash it, let it out. So I'm going to say goodnight for now. Thank you. Appreciate you.